My brother, Brandon, raised a glass of my best Cabernet to Redwood Creek Vineyard. He beamed at the crowd. Finally, it's family property. His guests, all gathered on my tasting patio, cheered and raised their own glasses. I just stood by the old oak tree, watching him boast. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the court order he was waving around like a trophy was based on a complete and total lie. As he started rambling about his plans for a grand reopening, 2 sheriff's cars crunched up the long gravel path. The celebration was over. It all started a week earlier. My mother Brenda's living room was packed. She'd called an emergency meeting on a Sunday afternoon, which was code for family gossip. Everyone was required to attend. The air in the room was thick and strange, buzzing with an anticipation that didn't include me, my brother, Brandon, and his wife, Heather, were sitting on the sofa like they were holding court. They were practically glowing, whispering to each other and barely able to contain their excitement. I leaned against the doorframe, sipping my coffee, just waiting. I knew this song and dance. It was never good for me. Thank you all for coming, Brenda began, standing by the fireplace and wringing her hands. She looked so proud. Brandon has some absolutely wonderful news to share with everyone. Brandon stood up, pulling out his phone. He had this fake humble entrepreneur look on his face, the one he used right before he asked for money. Thank you, Mom. As you all know, he started, Heather and I have been looking for a way to save the family legacy. I almost choked on my coffee. His legacy so far consisted of 3 failed startups, all funded by maxing out our mother's credit cards. He launched into this grand speech about Redwood Creek Vineyard. My vineyard. That beautiful land our Uncle Robert left to the family when he passed, he said, his voice dripping with false sentiment. My Uncle Kevin, who was sitting in the corner, frowned. I don't think Robert ever... Brandon just talked right over him. It's a place that should have been for all of us, for our children to make memories. But, as you know, Olivia has been squatting on it for years. Squatting. That was the word he chose. The room turned to look at me. I just stared back, my face blank. What do you mean? Squatting, Aunt Deborah asked. Leaning in. The vineyard Olivia's been using, Mom explained, like she was talking to a child. The one Uncle Robert intended for all of us. She's been living there, running it like it's hers, refusing to share access or profits with the rest of the family. That's not quite accurate, I said quietly. Let me finish. Olivia. Brandon snapped, shooting me a look. The king was speaking. The point is, that property is a family asset. It should have been available for all of us to build something. But Olivia's been territorial about it. She's been hoarding it. He paced in front of the fireplace. A true martyr. She refused to listen to reason. She refused to help me when my last business venture hit a snag. She left me no choice. So, Heather and we decided to take action. He looked at Heather, who picked up the cue perfectly. We filed a lawsuit. Heather said, her voice dripping with pride. A petition? Really? To force the sale of the property. As family members with clear inheritance rights, we had legal standing. Brandon puffed his chest out, taking over, and the court agreed. 100%. The judge saw right through the situation and ordered the property sold at auction to finally settle the estate dispute. He paused for dramatic effect, looking around the room at all the captivated faces. And guess who the highest bidder was? He pointed at himself with both thumbs, a grin splitting his face. We got it. $3.6 million. And the best part, it's worth at least $4.8 million. We saved the family legacy, and we're getting a massive return. The room exploded. My aunts and uncles were clapping, some even standing. My mother, Brenda, was openly crying, dabbing her eyes with a napkin. Oh, Brandon, I'm so proud of you, she sobbed. You see, He's always thinking of his family, and Brandon is so generous," Heather added, grabbing his arm. "He's agreed to let all of us be partners in the new wine label. We're going to rebuild it. A real family enterprise." More applause. They were all calculating their cut. I just watched, my coffee cup warm in my hands. I hadn't said a word. I let the scene play out. A silent movie of their greed. I waited until the clapping died down. And then I spoke. My voice was flat, cutting through the excitement. "When exactly do you take possession?" Brandon's smile tightened. He was annoyed I was ruining his moment. "Friday," he said curtly. 5 days. The sheriff's office is handling the eviction notice. You'll need to be out by Thursday night. Olivia. He looked me up and down. Seriously? I'd start packing if I were you. An eviction notice. I repeated. The words tasted like ash. "Oh. Don't be so dramatic. Olivia," my mother said, her voice sharp. All her proud tears were gone, replaced by the familiar sting of resentment. "You've had 3 years squatting up there. Rent-free. That's more than generous. It's time to let the real family enjoy it properly. It's time for you to share." I took a slow sip of my coffee. It was cold now. "That's interesting," I said, "because I didn't receive any eviction notice." Brandon scoffed, waving his hand impatiently. "It was filed with the court. Olivia, it's all legal. You'll get served this week. They probably just taped it to the gate." I kept my eyes on him. "Was this petition lawsuit?" I asked. "Filed in Sonoma County Superior Court." His confidence wavered. Just for a second. "Yes. Of course. Judge Alistair presiding. Everything is 100% legal and proper and tabber. I have the paperwork right here. And the case number." He fumbled for a document in his blazer pocket and rattled it off. Proud of his paperwork. Proud that he'd followed the steps. "Why? What are you planning to do? Go down there and fight it. You'll lose. The judge already ruled. It's over." I finally set my coffee cup down on the end table. "Excuse me one moment." I turned and walked into the quiet hallway, pulling my phone from my pocket. I could hear their excited chatter firing up again behind me. They were already planning the grand reopening. I dialed. "Melavier." "Ms. Hayes," answered on the second ring. "Ms. Hayes." "It's Olivia," I said, my voice low. "I'm at my mother's house, and apparently, my brother just filed a petition lawsuit against me regarding the Redwood Creek vineyard." I gave her the case number. I heard the sound of typing. Fast and sharp. "Hold on," she said. "Okay. I see it. Ms. Hayes said after a few seconds. Filed 8 months ago. And, yep. There's a default judgment." She paused. "Olivia, how did you ever receive service on this? Were you ever handed papers by a process server?" "No," I said. "This is the first I'm hearing of it. From my brother. In my mom's living room." "Then the default judgment is invalid on its face," she said, her voice hardening. I heard more typing. "Let me read the file." "Okay." The plaintiff, your brother, claimed the property was inherited family property from a Robert Morrison, who died in. Uncle Robert. I filled in. Right. But, Olivia, Robert Morrison didn't own that vineyard. You do. I know. I said. "Can you prove that?" she asked. It was the formal, legal question. "Yes." I said. "I bought it in 2017. For $2.5 million. I have the deed. I have the title insurance. I have the mortgage records, which I paid off 3 years ago. I have paid the property taxes continuously, every year, for 7 years. The county records will show me as the sole owner of record for that entire time." There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the phone. "Hold on. Ms. Hayes said, just hold on. I'll be right back." I didn't wait. I clicked off the phone and walked back into the living room. The mood was electric. They were already looking at websites for expensive new bottling equipment. Heather was talking about redesigning the tasting room. Brandon, I said. The room went quiet. All eyes on me. I must have looked pale. Or upset. Brandon's face settled back into a smirk. He thought this was the part where I begged. If you're going to beg to stay, Olivia, save it, he said, holding up a hand. The sale is final. The court has spoken. I'm not going to beg, I said. I'm going to explain to you why you've all just made a terrible mistake. What are you talking about? Heather said, her voice sharp. The judge ruled on false information. I said, the vineyard isn't family property. Brandon, it never was. I looked around at all of them. Their confused, angry faces. I bought it, I said, in 2017, for $2.5 million. Brandon let out a sharp, barking laugh. It was a reflex. That's absurd. You were 28 years old. You didn't have $2.5 million. You were a glorified coder. I was 28. I corrected him. With a Ph.D. in data science. And I was a senior executive at a tech firm that had just been acquired by a major player. My signing bonus and my vested stocks totaled $4.2 million. I bought the vineyard with cash for most of it. And I never, ever told any of you, because I knew exactly what you would do. I knew you'd do this. You're lying, Heather said. But the color was starting to drain from her face. You'd have to prove it. Okay, I said. I pulled my phone from my back pocket. Public records are a wonderful thing. I pulled up the Sonoma County Assessor's website. I typed in the address for Redwood Creek Vineyard. The page loaded, and I held it up for all of them to see. Owner of record Olivia. My full name. Purchase date August 2017. Purchase price $2,500,000. Current assessed value $4,800,000. My Uncle Kevin, who had been quiet this whole time, grabbed the phone from my hand. He stared at the screen, his eyes wide. Scrolling. Jesus Christ. Live, he whispered, looking at me. It's true. I took my phone back and looked straight at my brother. His mouth was open. He was shaking his head, trying to make it make sense. So when you filed a petition lawsuit, I said, my voice as cold and flat as a stone, claiming my property was inherited family property. You committed fraud when you told a judge you had inheritance rights. You committed perjury. The color drained from Brandon's face. He was staring at the phone screen, at the public record, and his reality was crumbling. I paid $3.6 million, he yelled, his voice rising into a panicky squeak. I have the cashier's check. The sale is final. The court said so. The sale is invalid if it was based on fraud. I said calmly. That's insane, Heather shouted. Standing up, the judge ruled. The judge ruled based on the lies you provided. I shot back. And another thing, did you ever properly serve me with notice of this lawsuit? Brandon and Heather just exchanged a quick, guilty glance. I'll take that as a no. I said, so, not only did you lie about ownership, you never properly served the actual owner. The default judgment is invalid on multiple grounds. My phone, which was still in my hand, buzzed again. I looked at the screen. It was Ms. Hayes. 1 second, I said to the room. I answered it. Ms. Hayes. Her voice was tight. Professional. Olivia. I found the core of his petition. This is much worse than I thought. I need you to listen to me very carefully. It's fine, I said, looking right at my brother, whose eyes were wide with terror. I'm putting you on speaker. My family should hear this. I tapped the button. The sharp, clear voice of Ms. Hayes filled the entire living room. Olivia, to convince the court of his standing, Ms. Hayes said, to prove this was family property. Your brother submitted a letter of intent as evidence. It was purportedly from your Uncle Robert, gifting the Redwood Creek vineyard to a so-called family trust. My blood went cold. I found that in his desk, Brandon stammered, looking at our mother. After he passed, it was his wish. No. Mr. Brandon. Ms. Hayes cut in, her voice like ice. It was not. We have a certified copy of Robert's final will. He left Olivia $100,000, which she received. He left you nothing. That letter, Mr. Brandon, is a forgery. The room completely stopped breathing. My mother, Brenda, put her hand over her mouth. To everyone listening in that room, Ms. Ice continued, and I could picture her in her office, taking points off on her fingers. Filing a false claim with the court is perjury. That's a felony. But manufacturing evidence, that is forgery. That is aggravated fraud on the court. Attempting to seize a $4.8 million asset using that forgery isn't a family dispute. It's a slate of serious prosecutable felonies. We are talking about wire fraud, possibly bank fraud, depending on how he secured the auction funds. She paused, and the silence was deafening. This is well beyond a civil matter. We are talking about serious predation, significant prison time. Heather let out a small, choked, gasping sound, like she'd been punched. I am filing an emergency motion to vacate the judgment based on this fraud and the forgery right now. Ms. Hayes said, it will be granted. And Olivia, she said, her voice softening just a fraction, I want you to know, I am now legally and ethically obligated to notify the Sonoma County District Attorney's Office of the forgery and the fraud on the court. I understand, I said. I need you in my office. In an hour. On my way, I said. I ended the call. The living room was silent. Absolutely. Deathly silent. Except for the sound of Heather, who was now crumpled on the sofa, making these awful, high-pitched gasping sobs. Brandon was just frozen, staring at the phone in my hand as if it were a snake. His face was a waxy, pale gray. My mother, Brenda, was the one who finally broke the silence. Her head snapped up, and she looked at me. Her face wasn't sad. It wasn't apologetic. It was twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. You, she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. This is your fault. I just stared at her. I couldn't even process the words. You did this, she screamed, taking a step toward me. You hid your money. You hid that vineyard. You let him do this. You set your own brother up. Brenda, calm down, Uncle Kevin said, standing up. No, she yelled, whirling on him. She did. She knew. She's cruel. She's always been cruel. She's right. Aunt Deborah said, her voice shaking but finding its strength. You could have stopped this. Olivia, you could have told us. Why would you hide your success from your own family? It's unnatural. And just like that, the entire narrative shifted. The switch was flipped. In the span of 30 seconds, Brandon was no longer a criminal who had committed multiple felonies. He was a victim, and I was the perpetrator. I looked at their faces, one by one. The confusion was gone, replaced by a new, unifying certainty. They were all nodding. Yes, it was my fault. I had trapped him. It was a strange thing to watch. It was the moment I finally understood. They had heard the facts, but the logic would never compute for them. They couldn't, because they were reacting from a place of familial entitlement. It's a toxic mindset I'd been reading about, but I'd never seen it so clearly. In this kind of system, the family unit operates like a communal pot. In their minds, my $4.2 million bonus wasn't my money, it was a family resource that I was hoarding. My vineyard wasn't my property. It was an asset I had selfishly stolen from the collective. My refusal to share wasn't me setting a boundary. It was me stealing from them. So, in their twisted logic, my brother's fraud wasn't really a crime. It was just his clumsy, desperate attempt to take back what was rightfully theirs, and by exposing him, I wasn't defending myself. I was destroying the family. We're going to lose everything, Brandon whispered, his voice cracking. My house. Heather, you're not going to lose anything, Brandon, I said, my voice empty of all emotion. You'll get your $3.6 million back from the court, minus fees. I assume. I picked up my purse and my car keys from the end table. What you're going to lose, I said, looking him dead in the eye, is your clean record. And your freedom, depending on what the DA decides. You committed multiple felonies. Brandon, you forged a legal document. That's on you. I'm your sister, he pleaded, finally looking at me. He's your brother. My mother sobbed. A family doesn't press charges against family, Aunt Deborah said, as if it were a law. A family doesn't steal houses from family. I shot back. But here we are. I walked to the front door. Olivia. Wait, my mother cried. You can fix this, call your lawyer back, tell her it was a misunderstanding. I turned at the door and looked at them all. A room full of people I had known my entire life, who had just celebrated the theft of my home. I'm going to my attorney's office now, I said. Then I'm going home, to my vineyard. The one that I own? The one that none of you will ever set foot in again? The grand reopening is cancelled. The family wine label is not happening. Because it's mine. And it always was. I opened the door. You're destroying this family, my mother screamed. I walked out and didn't look back. The emergency hearing was 2 days later. The courtroom was packed. I sat with Ms. Hayes at one table, Brandon, Heather, and their terrified-looking lawyer sat at the other. My mother, Brenda, and Aunt Deborah were sitting in the front row, looking like they were at a funeral. Judge Alistair, who was famous for having zero patience for nonsense, walked in. He did not look happy. Ms. Hayes was methodical. She was brilliant. She presented the original 2017 deed, 7 years of paid property tax receipts, the bank records from my $4.2 million tech bonus, and the signed affidavits from 2 separate court-certified handwriting experts. Both experts confirmed that the letter of intent from Uncle Robert was, and I quote, a crude and obvious forgery. Judge Alistair looked over his glasses at Brandon's lawyer. Sir, did you verify any of this? Did you run a simple $30 title search before you filed a lawsuit to auction a $4.8 million property? The lawyer, who looked like he was about to be sick, just stared at his desk. He was silent. The judge turned his gaze to my brother. Mr. Brandon, he said, his voice booming. Did you forge this letter? Brandon, to his credit, just sat there, gray-faced and silent. Judge Alistair slammed his gavel. The sound cracked through the room. The default judgment is vacated. The auction sale held by this court is declared null and void. Mr. Brandon's $3.6 million will be returned by the court, minus significant administrative fees and penalties. He looked at me. Ms. Olivia is, and remains, the sole, legal, and undisputed owner of the Redwood Creek Vineyard property. He wasn't done. Furthermore, he said, looking back at my brother with absolute disgust, this court finds that this entire lawsuit was filed fraudulently, with malicious intent, and based on manufactured, perjured evidence. I am referring this entire matter, he said, including the clear-cut case of forgery, to the district attorney's office for immediate criminal prosecution. This court is adjourned. It was over. Outside the courtroom, as Ms. Hayes and I were walking to the elevators, Heather ran at me. Her face was blotchy and swollen from crying. Olivia, please, she begged, grabbing my arm. You can't let them do this. He's your brother. Think of his children, our children. You're going to let their father go to prison. I stopped and looked at her. I pulled my arm from her grasp. I'm not doing anything to his children. Heather, I said. Their father is... He chose to commit multiple felonies. He chose to forge a document. He did this. Not me. I walked away, leaving her sobbing in the hallway, faced with a mountain of evidence. The district attorney's office offered Brandon a plea deal rather than waste taxpayer money on a long trial. He took it. 2 years of probation, 500 hours of community service, full restitution of all my legal fees, which came to $80,000, and a permanent, lifelong felon record. My mother and Aunt Deborah stopped speaking to me entirely. As far as they were concerned, I had destroyed the family over a misunderstanding. The only one who called was Uncle Kevin. He called me about 2 weeks after the hearing. Hey, Liv, he said, his voice quiet. I just wanted to call. Your mother is... Well, she's telling everyone you trapped him, that you hid the vineyard on purpose, just to set him up. My ownership is public record. Uncle Kevin, I said, tired. They just never bothered to look. I know, he said. I know. I checked the records myself. You bought that vineyard at 28. That's... Hell. Kid. Good for you. Your Uncle Robert. He would have been damn proud of you. I teared up for the first time in a week. Thank you. Uncle Kevin? You take care of yourself, he said, and hung up. Which brings me back to today. I stood on the patio of my vineyard, watching the sunset. Brandon had planned a party to celebrate his new life, his grand reopening. Instead, he had a felony record and was paying me $80,000 in restitution. The sheriff's cars that crunched up the gravel path, they weren't for me. They were for him. He had shown up, drunk and screaming, demanding to be let onto his property. They were here to serve him with the restraining order Ms. Hayes had filed. I watched them escort him, red-faced and yelling, off my land. And then, for the first time in months, there was silence. I turned, walked back to my tasting room, and poured myself a glass of my best Cabernet. It was mine. It always was. We're all fed a comforting lie as children. We're told, blood is thicker than water. But that's not the full quote. The full proverb is, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. It means the bonds we choose, the covenants we make, are stronger than the family we're just born into. Sometimes, blood isn't a bond. It's a cage. Or, in my case, it was a poison, seeping into the roots of everything I tried to build. It takes a terrifying amount of courage to amputate a part of your life, to walk away from the people who are supposed to love you. But the peace you find on the other side, that's unconditional. That's real. And it is worth the price. Story 2. The founder's homestead is for Megan, my father. Robert announced, his voice booming across the grand wine cellar. This wasn't a quiet family gathering. It was a full-blown PR event to launch our new collection, complete with journalists and local influencers. Everyone cheered. The flash of cameras bounced off the silver wine buckets. My little sister, Megan, was practically glowing. She'd just finished her marketing degree. And now Dad was handing her the title of creative director and the keys to the $30 million estate our grandfather built. I stayed in the back, half hidden by an oak barrel, as everyone raised their glass to toast Megan and her new life. I quietly opened the legal app on my phone. I saw the final confirmation, 10:59 a.m., right on schedule. And I smiled. This party wasn't for our new wine. It was for Megan. It was always for Megan. My sister and I were two sides of the same coin, minted in different decades. She got the shiny, parent-funded marketing degree from a private university. She was the face of the brand. I was the hands, I got a degree in sustainable agriculture from a state school. I paid for it myself by working nights and weekends at a rival vineyard, learning soil, chemistry, and grape rot. The things my father, Robert, found distasteful. My graduation, 8 years ago, was a quiet dinner at the Cheesecake Factory. My parents gave me a card with a $1,000 check inside. My mother, Jennifer, said, "We're so proud you're finally done with all that dirt." A $1,000 check. Megan was just handed a $30 million legacy and the title of creative director. "I'm thinking we knock out this entire wall," Megan said, gesturing wildly to the journalists. "The rustic look is so dated. I want clean lines. White marble. Maybe a water feature." My mother, Jennifer, nodded eagerly. "Whatever you need, sweetheart. The homestead should reflect your vision." My vision was of the clock on the cellar wall. 10:45 a.m. 15 minutes. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Not a text. It was a calendar alert from my legal team. The subject line was simple: activation. I had spent my entire life being the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who actually understood the land our entire fortune was built on. While Megan was learning to market wine, I was learning how to make it, and for years, I had been planning for this exact day, this exact minute. My grandfather, the man who actually built this place, had seen this coming. He saw my father's obsession with image, he saw my mother's enabling, and he saw me. 10:46 a.m. 14 minutes. I felt another vibration. A text from the estate attorney. "All documents are executed. Awaiting the final transfer. Your grandfather would be very proud." I took a sip of the new Cabernet. It was thin. Dad had clearly rushed the harvest to meet the launch date. I watched Megan laugh, soaking in the applause. Let her have this moment. Let her plan her white marble renovations. In 14 minutes, she'd need my permission to change a light bulb. The last 15 minutes dragged on. I thought about my real job, the one my family knew nothing about. For the past 3 years, I wasn't just helping out at some small local winery. I was the head of soil science for our biggest competitor, the one that was systematically beating us in every awards category. I was the one developing the techniques that were making their wine better. While my own family's legacy was being bottled and sold thin, my brother, Ryan, nudged me. "You gonna eat that, or just stare at it?" I pushed the tiny appetizer plate toward him. "You can have it." Then, the clock on the cellar wall struck 11 a.m. As if on cue, my father's phone rang, a loud, obnoxious ringtone he'd set for his most important contacts. He glanced at the screen, and his smile tightened. It was the family's law firm, the one that managed the estate. "Excuse me. Everyone," he said, forcing a laugh. "The price of success. Always on call." He stepped outside onto the stone patio. Through the thick glass doors, we could all see him. At first, he looked annoyed, waving his hand as if dismissing something. Then he went still. He stared at his phone. His expression shifted from annoyed to confused, and then his face went pale. The kind of white, blood-drained pale that means the bottom has just dropped out. The party's laughter died down. Everyone was watching him. He ended the call, fumbled with his phone for a moment, and then walked back inside. He walked right past Megan, who was posing for a photo. He ignored my mother. He walked straight to me, his eyes wide. "I need to speak with you. Now." He grabbed my elbow not gently and pulled me into a small alcove by the tasting bar, away from the journalists. "What is this?" he hissed, shoving his phone in my face. It was an email from the board, from the attorneys. I read the subject line out loud. "Notice of corporate charter activation." "Read the rest of it," it demanded, his hand shaking. "The dormant succession clause, triggered upon the 30th birthday of the designated heir, has been activated." I read. He snatched the phone back. "It says, you, Clara. It says you are now the controlling shareholder, and the new president of the entire estate. This is some kind of sick joke? Isn't it? It's a mistake. I looked at him calmly. It's not a mistake. Dad, it's right. His face crumpled in disbelief. How could you possibly know about this? Your grandfather died when you were 16. He never would have. He told me, I said, cutting him off right before he passed. He was very clear about what would happen today. He told me everything. We walked back to the center of the cellar. The music had stopped. The journalists were whispering, sensing a story far better than the one they'd been invited for. My mother, Jennifer, rushed over. Robert, what is it? You look ill. Megan stamped her foot, her face red and blotchy from the champagne. What is going on, Dad? You're ruining my party. What did she say to you? Everyone looked at me. The quiet one. The shadow. I had never held the center of this family's attention for more than a few seconds. I cleared my throat. There's been a misunderstanding, I said, my voice clear and steady. The whole room leaned in. Dad, you've made a promise to Megan that wasn't yours to make. Clara, don't you dare. My mother started, but I held up a hand. This estate, I said, looking around at the massive oak barrels and stone walls, is not owned by my father. It hasn't been for 15 years. It is a corporate asset managed by a charter established by my grandfather. The room was dead silent. Grandfather's charter was very specific. He created a dormant succession clause. The estate was to be managed by a board until the eldest, most competent heir turned 30. At that point, full controlling interest and the title of president would transfer to them. I looked at my watch. As of 11 a.m. today, that's me. Megan left. A high-pitched, nervous sound. That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Dad, tell her she's lying. My father just stared at his feet, his face ashen. He can't, I said, because he just received the notification. You all seem to think this is just a fancy house and some fields. You're wrong. This is a $30 million corporation. A corporation that, despite my father's best efforts to run it like a personal piggy bank, has been generating over $80,000 a month in net income. Income that has been sitting in a corporate account, managed by the board, just waiting. My mother looked like she was going to faint. 80,000 a month, Robert. What is she talking about? She's talking about the money? I said simply, the money you've been spending and the money I've been tracking. Grandfather set up the charter to prevent exactly this, to protect his legacy from impulsive management. I looked right at my father when I said it. He wanted someone who understood the land, not just the label. Megan's face went from disbelief to pure, unfiltered rage. Then change it, she screamed, her voice echoing in the suddenly quiet cellar. The journalists were recording everything now. You just said you're in control. Clara, so be in control, just give me the homestead Dad promised. I can't do that. Megan? That's just lawyer talk for, I'm keeping it all for myself, she spat. Actually, a new voice cut in. It was my Aunt Susan, my father's sister. She was a quiet member of the board. Someone my father had always dismissed as sentimental. She stepped forward. She's right. Megan, she can't. Your grandfather, my father, was terrified of this. He was terrified that Robert would treat this legacy like a credit card and that the rest of us would let him. My father shot her a look. Susan, this is not the time. It's precisely the time, Susan said. She looked at me with sad, tired eyes. Your grandfather's intentions are perfectly clear, and he knew who he could trust. My father was about to argue, but I held up my hand. She's right, I said. He didn't just leave instructions in the charter. He left this. I reached into my bag and pulled out a worn, leather-bound book. The Founder's Ledger. My father's face went white. He knew exactly what it was. It was the book our grandfather wrote, everything in his planting schedules, his formulas, his philosophy. I opened it to the last page, a page I had read 1,000 times. The ink was faded, but the handwriting was strong. "I am reading this," I said to the room, "not to shame anyone, but to honor the man who built this." I read his words. "This legacy is more than dirt and grapes. It is a testament to patience. It must be protected from fast hands and slow minds." I paused, letting the words hang. He left a final note. "For my father," I looked directly at Robert. "Robert, my son, I love you, but you value image over substance. You would sell the roots to paint the leaves. You will bankrupt this family's spirit long before you bankrupt its wallet. For this reason, I am placing the future of this land in the hands of the only one who shares my heart for it. I trust Clara. She will keep it safe." The silence was absolute. The truth was finally out. Megan looked at my father, who wouldn't meet her eyes. Then she looked at me. It was a look of pure hatred. You planned this?" she shrieked. "You were always jealous. You couldn't stand seeing me get something. So you ruined it." She grabbed her glass of our thinnest wine. "Keep your stupid, dirty vineyard." She hurled the glass against the stone wall, where it shattered, spattering red wine across a row of new barrels. Then she grabbed her purse and stormed out of the cellar, shoving a journalist on her way. My mother, Jennifer, after a moment of stunned silence, ran out after her. "Megan, sweetheart, wait." The party was officially over. My mother, Jennifer, didn't stay with her long. She came back into the cellar a minute later, her face tight with a fury I had never seen directed at anyone but a slow waiter. She walked right up to me, and her voice was a low whisper, more venomous than any scream. How could you humiliate your sister like that? In front of all these people. On her day, I looked at her, really looked at her. Maybe for the first time, I didn't humiliate her. "Mom, her expectations did. Your expectations did. You and Dad spent her entire life convincing her she deserved a $30 million estate for a marketing degree. And you're angry at me for telling the truth." She was speechless. She just kept opening and closing her mouth, and in that silence, I understood something. I understood why they did it. Have you ever wondered why, in so many families, there's one child who seems to get all the resources, all the attention, all the bailouts, while the other one, the quiet one, the responsible one, is completely ignored? It's a psychological quirk. It's called the squeaky wheel syndrome. The theory is simple. The wheel that makes the most noise gets the grease. My sister, Megan, was the squeaky wheel. She was loud. She was demanding. She was constantly in some kind of minor crisis that needed my parents' immediate attention and money. Her life was a series of small fires, and my parents were always rushing in with buckets of water. I was the quiet wheel. I was self-sufficient. I got my own degree, paid my own bills, and never asked for anything. So in their minds, I didn't need anything. They weren't bad people. Not really. They were just inefficient managers. They mistook Megan's noise for need, and my silence for strength. They weren't giving her more love. They were just giving her more management, trying to grease the wheel that wouldn't stop squeaking, just so they could have some peace. The problem is, after decades of this, the squeaky wheel starts to believe it deserves all the grease, and the quiet wheel learns to move on its own. My father, Robert, I finally found his voice. He was trying a different tactic, righteous indignation. "You should have told us, Clara. You should have warned us before all this." He gestured to the shattered glass, the horrified journalists, the ruin of his party. He was trying to make this my fault. "I did," I said. He blinked. "What?" "I did warn you. I sent you and Mom an email 3 months ago. The day the estate administrator contacted me about the upcoming activation, I outlined the entire timeline. I attached the relevant sections of the charter. I specifically suggested you review grandfather's will before making any promises about corporate assets. I watched the color drain from his face for the second time that day. He was remembering. That email, he stammered. I saw that. I thought it was spam. Some kind of phishing scam. It looked complicated. I didn't read it carefully. I just stared at him. You thought an email from our family's estate attorney, with the subject line, regarding the founder's charter, was a phishing scam. I get a lot of emails, he said, his voice cracking. And that, I said, turning to the few remaining guests, is why grandfather did this. Because my father doesn't read the details. He just throws the party. My dad had nothing to say. He had just publicly admitted his own incompetence. He had failed to read the email that would have saved him. And Megan, all of this humiliation, it wasn't my fault. It was his, and he knew it. The journalists left first, scrambling to get the story out. The other guests just quietly melted away, not wanting to be part of the family explosion. Soon, it was just me, my brother Ryan, and Aunt Susan, standing in the cellar among the empty glasses and the stain of red wine on the wall. Ryan, ever the pragmatist, cleared his throat. So, just to be clear, does this mean I can't use the homestead for my fantasy football draft next month for free? I mean, I almost laughed. It was the most predictable thing he could have said. No one gets it for free. Ryan, I said, picking up the ledger. Not anymore. The founder's homestead is a corporate asset. It has operating costs. Family members can book it, but you'll pay the family rate, which covers the cleaning, utilities, and insurance, just like any other shareholder. But we've never had to pay before, he whined. The rules were always in the charter, Aunt Susan said, her voice firm. Your father just chose to ignore them. Clara is simply enforcing them. That's changing, I said. Everything is changing. That evening, I was in my small apartment, the one I paid for with my own salary. When my father called, I let it ring 3 times before answering. His voice was small, defeated. My lawyer says, you're right, he said. No hello. He said the charter is ironclad. There's nothing I can do. I waited. Your mother, he continued. She says you've destroyed this family. She says, you did this to shame us. I didn't do this. Dad, I said, my voice tired. You did. You and Mom did. You promised something that wasn't yours to give. I'm just protecting what grandfather built. I'm here to honor his legacy. Not to manage your feelings or win your approval. He was silent for a long time. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. That ledger, he finally asked, his voice cracking. What else did it say? What else did he say? About me. I closed my eyes, picturing the last lines. He said this would be hard. He said family would resist. He said you would all try to make me feel guilty. And he said, I took a deep breath, that I must stand firm, that I was the keeper of the roots. He was right. Dad. I heard a small sound, like a sobe cut short. And then he hung up. I walked to my window and looked out. I couldn't see the vineyard from here, but I could feel it. I felt the weight of $30 million, of a 30-year plan clicking into place. And I thought about all the other people out there, the ones who feel like I did. If you are one of them, if you, like me, have spent your life being the quiet one, the competent one who gets overlooked, the one who has to work twice as hard for half the recognition while someone else gets applauded just for showing up. If you are the one who has to be your own parent, your own safety net, the one who is always expected to be fine while others are allowed to fall apart, I want you to understand this. Your silence was not weakness. It was observation. Your self-sufficiency was not a flaw. It was your training. You weren't being left behind. You were being forged. And when your moment comes, when the charter is finally activated, your competence will speak louder than any empty promise ever could. Don't seek their approval. They will never give it. Seek your legacy and protect it.